Before I begin the video, I just want to flag, as always, that I am not a qualified financial advisor and nothing I say should be considered as financial advice. Hello, I'm the Jolly Saver, and in this video I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've been thinking about for a while, and that is what to do with my extra money. I've majorly focused on overpaying my mortgage over the past couple of years, and now I'm wondering whether I should, instead of overpaying the mortgage as much, maybe I should direct that money towards my stocks and shares ISA. Now, before I go into the video, I just want to state, as always, and it has to be it's very important I state that's in this video, that this isn't financial advice. It's me just exploring some projections, using Excel to think about how I can maybe make the best decision for my own personal circumstances. So I'm not going to be saying which one's better than the other in this video, and I'm not intending for you to do what my opinion is, you know what I mean? I think it's a case of I'm going to talk through the figures. As always, if you've got any thoughts or your own opinions, put them down in the comments box down below, but just bear in mind as I go through that this is my own financial situation and it's not advice. So I've come up with two sort of scenarios that I'm considering in my head. Sorry, I just put my phone on silent, 2 seconds. It's two scenarios that I've got. The first one is overpay my mortgage as it currently is. So basically we have a standard payment of £509 a month, and then we're currently, up until October 2026 when our deal ends, we're making an overpayment which is fixed of £100 per month. So the idea would be I'd overpay up until then, and then I wouldn't overpay, and instead the £1,000 a month that me and my partner have, say, a spare that we can manage to squirrel away each month, instead put that in a stocks and shares ISA up until the year that I turn 40. So one of the aspects of this is, in my scenario, I want to invest or save or overpay as much as possible in the next few years in my 30s, so that from 40 onwards I can really just sit back and enjoy the fruits of my sort of investing, overpayment, what have you. So that's the scenario. So that's scenario one, and I'll talk through those figures in a minute. And then scenario two, which is over here, is instead of paying like minimally, I'll overpay by £500 a month, which is roughly knocking £1,000 a month off the mortgage balance, and then with the remaining £500, then I'll invest that. So scenario one, where I invest £1,000 per month from April. So the reason I put from April next year is because if you follow my other videos, you'll know that my emergency fund is really low, and I don't feel comfortable having an emergency fund that is so low. So I need to prioritize that. So from April time, we'll be able to move this £1,000 and pop it into one of these few options. So what my mortgage would look like is that at the moment, up until October 26, that my interest rate is 1.16%. So it's roughly £100 a month that's being added on interest, and that's why the overpayment figure is £100. So you can see there that I'd be knocking £500 off the mortgage balance. And then in October 26, I used a calculator based on a bit of a guesswork that my interest rate is going to be possibly 3.5%. It seems like that's what, this isn't advice, but it seems like that's what interest rates may be by then. Maybe they'll have settled down and be more between 3 and 4%. So you can see here that I'll be paying nearly £600 off the mortgage balance. Sorry, £600 in standard payments, but then we've got some higher interest from October 26, so a lot less is coming off the mortgage balance. So you can see that actually with that, I'm not going to be mortgage free with that until like August 2044. So that's that. And you can see here I've got the total interest cost. So by the end of the mortgage, it'll cost me roughly about 30 grand in interest. Now, the alternative that I'm exploring is whether to take that £1,000 a month and put it in a stocks and shares ISA. Now, as people will be aware, but just to clarify, stocks and shares products come with risk. So, depending on the investments that you choose to invest in, there is an associated risk with that. So even though I've forecast this as like a linear projection of always getting 5% per year, the reality is that there'll be fluctuations. So there may be a lot of years which are down, some years which are up, and on average, I'm assuming for these models that I'm either getting a 5% interest rate, which I think is probably what I'll class as my conservative estimate, and then the other scenario I've got is an 8% annual interest rate. So you can see, I've currently got £8,500 in my ISA. So from April 25, if I was to contribute £1,000 per month, you can see how the final balance starts racking up. It starts getting up quite a lot, and then I've got this differences between savings and mortgage. So actually, under the scenario of a 5% interest rate, by February 2030, that'll be when I'll be mortgage neutral. So my final balance on my ISA would be £77,000, and the mortgage balance at that point should be also around £77,500. So at that point, if I wanted to, I could pay off the mortgage. But the sort of benefit is what you would maybe want to call the compounding effect. So you see, the year before I turned 40, maybe I would stop investing and I'd have 91,000 in my account. And then, if I was to have 5% annual return, it may be that, come back. So I'm thinking going forward, I've got over 100. And then if I projected forward until I'm 50, say, it's around the £150,000 mark. But that, as I say, is a conservative estimate. If I look at what people say historic stock market returns could be, this £1,000 a month, you can see that the balance actually moves up a bit faster, and the mortgage neutral date is November 2029. So that's I think that's a little bit earlier. Oh no, is it exactly the same? Right, bear with us. I'm just confused at the oh no, sorry, I was right. So it's a bit earlier because I've highlighted this and that's the wrong one to highlight. So this is what happens when you do things on the fly. So let me just shade that out, and then the mortgage one is this one. Yeah, so it'd be around February 30, whereas the 8% would get me there November 2029. But I think the main thing to note here is that, stopping investing December 2030, and then you can see here really the interest really starts to have that compounding effect. So it's building up interest of £1,500 per month, and you can see here that the total interest that I would have earned would be 221,000 by the time I'm in my mid-50s. So the compounding has had a huge impact, whereas 5%, I would only have got 102,000. So you can see that it has a dramatic effect depending on what the interest rate is. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is is overpaying by £500 a month, which knocks £1,000 more or less off the mortgage balance each month. Now, I think you can see here that if I was to do that, then by the time I'm in I'll be mortgage free definitely by February 34, so when I'm in my very early 40s. And the and I would say when I'm kind of at the beginning of my 40th year, so at the beginning of 2031, I'd have just 37,000 left on the mortgage, which is, it's really small. And, might have seen a bit of a spoiler there, and I've done the same mistake, so I'm just going to So investing £500 a month, you can see that the balance is still going up, but it's less dramatically going up as I had in scenario 1. And at a 5% rate, I would be mortgage neutral at May 30. Whereas with an 8% rate, I would be mortgage free at February 30. So actually, the mortgage neutral, so where my mortgage balance is the same as my investment balance, that doesn't change too much. So in scenario 1, the earliest I'm going to do is November 29. In scenario 2, the earliest I'll do is February 30. So it's only a couple of months difference. I think the main thing to say on this one is that actually, with what I would have in my stocks and shares ISA is I would have the total interest earned on it at 8% would be 126,000. So that's obviously like £100,000 less than the scenario 1, because it's had there's less amount of money compounding. So that's £100,000 difference, but the amount of difference that I would have seen in my mortgage interest that's accrued, it would be 13,000 versus 30,000. So it's a £20,000 less interest in this scenario, but actually with 100,000 you're still 80,000 worse off than scenario 1. So that's a lot of numbers, and appreciate that's a bit of a whistle stop tour. So what do I think? Well, the first one to say is that it's very easy to put things on a spreadsheet and make up a plan, but actually sticking to a plan is another thing. So I might have great intentions to be able to save £1,000 a month, but that's not always going to be possible because things crop up and things don't go to plan. The other thing is that these scenarios really assume that I've got really rational behavior. So it assumes that, in these scenarios where I'm putting £1,000 a month in, that I'm never taking out the investments. So like I'm never gonna withdraw until this, when I'm in my 50s, say. And is that realistic? I don't know. The pros, obviously, of the focusing on investments is that I really take advantage of that compounding effect. However, the pros of the overpaying on the mortgage alongside investing is that I can really see the impact that money's having, because I will see that the term's reducing, and once I become mortgage free, I won't have that bill, so I'll really be able to feel it. And also, there's something about risk there. So with investing, there is a risk associated. So I've said 8% return annual. we don't know if that'll happen. And I think one of the things that I've got to acknowledge is that I could invest heavily over the next few years, and those years could be years when the stock market has went down, and that would be something that I would have to be able to tolerate. So I'd have to tolerate investing large sums of money into a fund that is going down in value. So even though my intention would be over the long term, I would really have to put my risk tolerance to the test. But there's an element of me when I look at these figures that thinks, a difference of, I don't know, say £80,000, and that would compound even more as I move from my 50s to my 60s. I suppose the question is, am I doing something? Like, am I not taking a risk, and that risk would really pay off, and would I regret it? But I think one of the problems I've got is if I imagine a future self, and I imagine, so say I've got this, I'm in scenario 1, and I'm investing £1,000 per month, and say it is 8% return. And I'm lucky that within the first 8 or 9 years, it has been 8%. So, I've been lucky, and I'm at this scenario where I've got £79,000 in my stocks and shares ISA. I'm not sure I'd have the restraint not to just pay off my mortgage, because that money that's in that bank account, it doesn't quite feel real when it's just numbers on a screen. And one of the voice inside my head would be saying, but what happens if someone there's fraud, or someone takes your money? And it's really complicated to think, but it's these behavioral aspects, even though that might sound ridiculous to people. It's those behavioral aspects that I've got to be aware of, because actually I'm a human with emotions, and if I got to be at this stage here where I had the money to pay off the mortgage, I can't say I wouldn't just withdraw it and pay off the mortgage, because that's been a goal of mine, and that feels really real. So if I did all that effort and I got to that point and I did that, it would seem like, well, I might as well have not had the risk, and I could have just overpaid the mortgage from day one anyways, and I could have done scenario 2. And I think this is what's really complicated with money and thinking about your own personal circumstances, is that we're not robots. So I have, every time I upload a mortgage overpayment video, or savings video, whatever it is, there's always someone in the comments who puts the rational argument about, you can get X% better elsewhere, you're wrong doing this. But people don't quite appreciate the fact, but they probably do, but they don't quite appreciate when they're talking to other people about the impact that emotions have on your decisions. And I'm a numbers person, as you might have picked up. I love looking at projections. I love looking at how much your money can go up or down by, and what that might mean future wise. But when it comes to it, I want to be in a position where I feel like I've got maybe diversification, and me owning my property outright is something that is very tangible and visible. And I think there's something about this scenario, putting everything into my ISA, that makes me worry that all I'll become is a miser. And it might sound ironic, because I've got a personal finance YouTube where I track my journey. So to average Joe on the street, I might appear as a miser, that I'm really focused on money. But actually, my focus on money is to reduce my debts and reduce the amount I owe, so I can really travel more and do all these great things. And my worry is, if I'm so focused on having this big pot of money, will I ever be inclined to spend it? Or will I just really always want to see the numbers come up? In which case, what happens if I got to my 50s and then I passed away early, and then I've built all this money and I've never spent it? It's just another worry. It's like, am I doing it all for nothing, because the money's, even though the value of money goes up, it's only got its value when you spend it, or at least that's what I believe. So yeah, it's a complicated one, and I'd be really appreciate if anyone's got any thoughts or comments. But just to flag, these are my thoughts. It's not advice. I mean, you might tell from this video that what I'm leaning towards is this scenario where it's a sort of best of both worlds. And obviously the impact of that would just be that I would have to acknowledge the fact that my investments aren't going to compound as quickly as they would do if I had more money in them. I mean, there is an alternative version which is the same as this but slightly different, which is, instead of overpaying, maybe I pop the money into my savings account or premium bonds, and got the money just sitting there so I can access it if needed, and do something else with it. But my only concern with that is that I might be tempted to spend the money. So yes, I'll leave the video there, and I'll see you on the next video.